Well, as you just heard in the news, teachers in some communities are off the job again today. It's part of the ongoing labor dispute between the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation and the provincial government. Over the last couple of weeks here on Blue Sky, we've heard from the education minister, the STF, from parents, and from teachers. We explored some of the issues at the heart of the complaints, including large class sizes and complex classrooms that don't have adequate support. So what does all this talk do for people's confidence in Saskatchewan's public schools? What kinds of conversations are parents having when they're trying to figure out the best option for their kids? Today on the show, we want to know what's at stake when parents lose faith in the public education system. How did we get here? And what will it take for parents and teachers to feel like kids are getting the best education possible? Call 1-800-716-2221 or email bluesky@cbc.ca. Well, we encourage you to call early in the show, because every time we've had one of these conversations, we get so many calls and it's difficult to fit them all in. So if you have an opinion on this, don't wait. Call 1-800-716-2221 or email bluesky@cbc.ca. Matt Love was a teacher here in Saskatoon until he became an MLA. He's now the education critic for the NDP, and he's with me here in our Saskatoon studio. Welcome to Blue Sky.
Good afternoon, Alicia. It's great to be here on Blue Sky.
Yeah, I appreciate this. So I think it's fair to say at this point that Saskatchewan is not in a good place when it comes to the relationship between the government and teachers in this province. So what do you make of what we've been seeing?
Yeah, it's actually quite an understatement to say we're not in a great place. I think that for the better part of a decade, we've had a provincial government, a Sask Party government, now under Premier Mo, who have ignored the concerns of teachers. For the better part of that decade, we've seen cuts to per-student funding, and the impact of those cuts are hurting our kids. So today, the situation we're in today, we didn't have to be here. We got here for really one reason, a Sask Party government that's ignored the concerns that teachers have been raising for 10 years about the situation in our classrooms. So teachers are standing up for their working conditions, because their working conditions are the learning conditions of our kids. And they're standing up and they're putting the needs of kids first.
You were a teacher before you became a politician. So how does that inform your perspective? How does that shape the way you look at things?
Yeah, I think my perspective is certainly informed by the decade I spent in classrooms right here in Saskatoon. I saw firsthand the impact of cuts. I can point to a moment when I maybe decided to run for provincial politics, and it was a 3:30 Friday staff meeting when we were informed about the way that cuts would be impacting my school community. And those cuts year after year were devastating, not just for my colleagues, but for the families that we serve.
What were the cuts?
Oh, I mean, it's a long list. Over just a couple of years, I saw cuts to the librarian in my school was completely eliminated at one point. I saw cuts to our EAL teachers supporting students who are new to English language. I had a colleague teaching math to over 40 students at a time. I saw cuts in our custodial staff. I saw increase in class sizes, saw a reduction in educational assistance. Like, the list goes on and on and on. So certainly my work is informed by the time I spent as a teacher in the system. It's also informed by the fact that I'm a dad to 3 kids in the public system, and I see their teachers doing an incredible job, admirable work, working as hard as any individual could be expected to work to meet the needs of the massive class sizes that they have, the incredible complex needs that are in every school and likely in every classroom in our province. I see teachers working hard, burning out, questioning how long they can go on like this. So the situation that we have today is really at the feet of this government. They've ignored it for a decade, and teachers can't go on in that manner any longer.
Has your opinion changed at all now that you're a politician? You're privy to conversations that maybe you weren't as a teacher, and I'm wondering if that's shifted your perspective at all, your understanding of budgets, of just how much money there is for all the things that people say need to be funded better, healthcare, education, etc. So has your opinion changed at all as a politician?
Oh, 100% it's changed. As a classroom teacher, I had professional responsibility over the teenagers. I taught grade 9 mostly, the young people in my classroom. I didn't really have that wide scope of an entire system and how decisions made in Regina, in the legislature where I now work, impact classrooms. I have that perspective now. And I see that we have an education system with a lot of stakeholders involved. Yes, we've got teachers. We certainly have parents and students, concerns of families and caregivers. We've got locally elected school boards in this province that are, I think, all for the last number of years, they've all been saying the same thing. They all say that we have a system that's been cut to the bone. We have school boards last year at budget time that described the provincial budget as further eroding public education in our province. All of those stakeholders say that this provincial government is not providing the adequate, sustainable, and predictable funding that our classrooms need so that every kid can have their needs met when they get to school.
And so now it's coming up in a labor dispute, and the STF is arguing that this should be written into the contract. And then the province says that this is best dealt with by the school division. So we have, two sides of how to best move forward. Where do you land on that?
So where we are today, we got here for one reason, and that's because this government has failed to provide the resources, the operating funds that local school divisions need to make good decisions. We're not here as a matter of first resort. This is the last resort. Teachers have been feeling that impact of what school divisions describe as a system that's cut to the bone. Last year, we had thousands, nearly 4,000 new students in Saskatchewan, yet we had 145 fewer teachers. We have fewer psychologists addressing the mental health needs in our schools. We have fewer supports providing speech therapy and all the things that make classrooms complex. All of those supports have been reduced. So for this government to say that local school boards have the ability to solve those problems, it's absolutely false. They only have the ability that's provided to them by the provincial government. And so teachers are the ones standing up today for our kids because this government has failed to provide the resources needed for those supports to be delivered to the classroom.
So should limits on classroom sizes and issues around classroom complexity, should that be written into a teacher's contract?
I'll tell you, I respect the right for teachers to negotiate on these things. I respect the right for teachers to bring these concerns forward through the bargaining process. The conciliator's report in this negotiation said the exact same thing, that this is a reasonable expectation for teachers to describe in their contract not just how much they get paid, how much they work, and what the working conditions are when they get to work. Those things can be included. In fact, those have been negotiated in other provinces in Canada. But we have to remember that the only reason that we got to where we are today is the Sask Party government's absolute failure to address any of these issues in the variety of ways that they have to address these issues. It doesn't need to be in a contract. It's only being negotiated because of the failure of Premier Moe and the Sask Party.
One thing that the government has said it's doing, and that they are actively working to address concerns around class size and complexity. They've earmarked $53.1 million as an investment towards enrollment and complexity, teacher-led innovation, and a support fund, and a specialized support classroom pilot project. We heard about these pilot projects just before the labor disruption. So what's your reaction to that? Does that not address the needs that you're seeing?
Absolutely not. The funds that this government is pointing to, first of all, this is Sask Party math. And in the education system, we always need to be highly critical of the dollar amounts that they put out there, because some of these funds have been delivered in previous programs. And so they're counting some of those numbers twice. With respect to the pilot projects do not solve the long-term needs of complexity in the classroom. The announcement of a pilot project is really meant to distract from the systemic issues of underfunding in our classrooms. School divisions are asking for funding that is adequate, that's predictable and sustainable. Offering a pilot project for a year to a year and a half certainly isn't sustainable, doesn't provide any predictability for those divisions in the future to bring staffing, put supports in place for the long term.
I want to put our question to you, Mr. Love, that we're asking people today. And what are the consequences if people start to lose faith in the public education system? But I would like to invite people to call us today with their perspective on things. Perhaps you're a parent and you've been listening to the concerns and you're wondering, well, will my child's needs be met in the classroom? What other options are you looking at? You can call us 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. So we have been hearing from parents, particularly ones with children who have learning disabilities, about their concerns with the public system, that their child's needs are not being met. And some people are even willing to seek out alternatives, whether that's paying for a private school or paying additional funds after school to support reading, as an example. And so what does that say to you? Is that a concern for you?
Yeah, I think that the concern for me comes in. You brought up the question of confidence in the school system. I do think that people are confident in our teachers. I think that certainly the support that we've seen for teachers on the picket line, parents, students speaking up in support for teachers, I think that there is confidence in our teachers. I think where people are losing confidence is in this government's willingness and their ability to adequately fund our classrooms. That's where I'd say people are starting to lose trust and confidence in the Sask Party government's ability to give our kids and our youth what they need when they get to school. Now, you asked about the implications of this. Certainly, we see people seeking out other means if their kids aren't getting the supports they need at school. I think it brings us to a really important point. We've seen massive costs forced on families and caregivers due to cuts in education. Families are now paying hundreds of dollars a year for their children to eat lunch at school. They're paying out of pocket for some of the supports, if they're able to, for the supports that their kids should be getting in an adequately funded school system. And again, I think that there's lots of agreement on this from school boards, locally elected trustees and boards, and from teachers, which again points us back to the provincial government. This lies at their feet. Their lack of funding, their lack of providing those adequate supports in schools are costing families big time.
You have raised concerns in the past about public money going towards qualified independent schools. This is something you've been vocal about. So first off, maybe just help us understand what a qualified independent school is.
Yeah, so this is a category of school created just over 10 years ago by this government to be independent from our public separate conseil scolaire systems. Um, these schools operate historically in an independent way that has led to some of these really horrific stories and allegations of abuse in these schools.
Some, not all. Not
Some, absolutely. There are lots of great independent, associate, historic high schools in our province. My concern throughout this has been with those that have been allowed by this government to operate in an independent way where abuse has taken place. We have allegations that have been proven in court and some yet to be heard in court. The stories are heartbreaking. This is only at a small number of these schools, and so my critique is of those schools.
What about the others, though? Because it does go beyond Christian qualified independent schools, right? That might have a religious teaching, a religious aspect to it. Because in a little bit later this half hour, we'll actually talk to two people from two of the schools. There's Prairie Sky School in Regina. And then the other principal we'll be talking to is from Roadways Literacy Academy. So this is a school in Saskatoon that works with students who have dyslexia. The principal has told me, and we will hear more from her later on the show, but a lot of parents come to her and say, I can't get the support my child needs. This is important. And they do receive public money. And Kristen Sawchuk, the principal, says this is an important service that the school is offering. And we'll get more into it because it's nuanced, right? And she hopes that a lot of these students do end up back in the public system. But what about that? Is that a good thing that public money is going to a school like that?
I think it's a result of the underfunding of the public system. So it's hard for me to sit here and say, is it necessary now due to this government's complete unwillingness to provide the supports in our public, separate, and conseil scolaire schools? That's a difficult question for me to answer. We need to look at the history of how we got here. A decade of cuts to per student funding, a decade of instead of solving the problems in our 625 public and separate schools, pulling resources out from that system and providing resources at an increasing rate to independent schools. We saw last year a 25% increase to independent schools in this province, while our schools where the vast majority of Saskatchewan students attend, would love to see that kind of increase to their operating funds.
What would your party do differently if you were to form government?
It's a great question, and I'll give you a straightforward answer. A Carla Beck NDP government would provide the adequate, predictable, sustainable funds that our school divisions need to meet the needs of our kids and our youth when they get to school.
How?
So this government they've dug us a big hole. After 10 years of cuts to education in the classroom, instead of solving those problems, they've invested in billboards. They've invested in telling a story about our schools that's just completely inaccurate to the realities in our classrooms. The way that we would step in is by reversing that trend, providing school divisions with the funds that they need when it gets to their budget decisions. Under a Carla Beck NDP government, they would be deciding which supports that were previously cut under the Sask party that they would now begin to add back in.
Where would that money come from, though? And I'm wondering how much you know about the changes to the mill rate. And would your party give school divisions the ability to bring in, if they need more money, that they'd have a way to raise that money?
I don't think that we're at a place where we're going to talk about the mill rate. I think that was well over a decade ago. Where we need to be.
Yeah, people still talk about that.
People still
as the
talk
change
about it.
That's led us here.
Yeah, well, I would say the bigger change was in 2017, right?
What happened in 2017?
The Sask party government cut upwards of $50 million from school divisions' operating funds. The implications of that for every year that's followed is that they have not yet returned to the level of supports available prior to 2017. So when the sole source of funding comes from the provincial government, for the operating funds that divisions need to make decisions, I put the responsibility at the feet of the provincial government, which is why, to my answer to your question, a Carla Beck NDP government would reverse that trend. We would no longer see falling per student funding for students. We'd see an increase to that so divisions could begin to put the supports back in place that have been lost under the Sask party.
I want to ask you where that money will come from, how you actually do that. But I do want to give people one more opportunity before we say goodbye to you, Matt Love, to call in. 1-800-716-2221 is the number to dial. You can also email us, bluesky@cbc.ca. I'm Leisha Gravinsky. You're listening to us on CBC Radio 1, 94.1 FM. I'm speaking today with Matt Love, the education critic for the NDP. Before he became a politician, he was a teacher in Saskatoon. I'll give you the last minute here before we do say goodbye to you of something very, very specific that you want to leave with listeners that would illustrate how, if your party were to form government, what they might see that's tangible in their own schools for their own kids that would show them a difference between your party and the current governing party.
You'd see a return to respectful relationships between teachers, school boards, and the provincial government. That respectful relationship will be based on listening and supporting schools to meet the needs at a local level of what our kids and our youth need in every community in Saskatchewan.
How are you currently trying to build that relationship with teachers?
I'm out there supporting teachers on the picket line, meeting with teachers regularly, answering their calls and emails in my office and in all of our offices. I'm also traveling this province, meeting with school divisions regularly. I've sat down with a number of divisions in the last month, building that relationship, building that trust, hearing from them what they need to make good decisions at the local level to meet the needs of our kids.
I thank you for joining us today on the show. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Thanks, Leisha. I appreciate being here.
We are asking, what are the consequences if people lose faith in the public education system? I just said goodbye to Matt Love, the education critic for the NDP, but he has graciously agreed to stay because we have a caller on the line who has a question specifically for Matt Love. So Darren in Regina, hello to you. I think we have Darren on the line. I don't hear Darren, though. Perhaps Darren had to get on with other things. You know what? We have another caller, and perhaps if this caller has a question for you, Mr. Love will get you to stay. So Paul Emile joins us right now near Nipawin. Hello, Paul Emile.
And good afternoon. It's not especially for Mr. Love. It's for you, I guess. You asked where would the money come from. It's like priorities. It's where there's a
Hey, Kristen, you'll be right up here.
back. This government gave everybody $500, even people that did not need it, including several hundred millionaires. That cost us over $400 million. So don't tell me that they could not find money to give the public school system fair funding. I mean, they've been increasing the private Christian schools funding, so it's a priority, I guess.
Okay. Thanks for that call, Paul Mullen. And Mr. Love, I'll let you talk about where that money will come from.
Yeah, Paul, I couldn't agree more. It's always about priorities come budget time. And the fact is that adequate public education in Saskatchewan has not been a priority for a decade under this government. But the other place where this money will come from.
Hey, Kristen, you'll be up right away here.
We have a government that is embroiled in scandal after scandal of waste and mismanagement of taxpayer dollars. I'll give you two examples. The AIM system in healthcare. They sold the public on a scheduling system that would cost $86 million. That's now ballooned, according to the provincial auditor, to be over $240 million. It's $250 million. Think about how useful those dollars could be actually providing the services that Saskatchewan people want and deserve in education and healthcare. Another one is the Lincoln system and social services. Again, we're looking upwards of tens of millions of dollars of waste and mismanagement. This is a track record that we've seen from this government. Often these mega projects that tend to benefit their big donors. Often they're out of province donors more than it benefits the people of Saskatchewan. So the first place that we look to find the money to provide the services that Saskatchewan people deserve is just cutting all that waste management.
Okay. We'll leave it there. I will let you leave the studio. Mr. Love, thank you so much for your time today. Matt Love with us.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. The NDP's education critic. I'm Leisha Grabinski. This is Blue Sky. We're hoping you'll join the conversation today. 1-800-716-2221 or email bluesky@cbc.ca. I lied because we do have Darren on the line in Saskatoon who does have a specific question for you. So let's try this again. You're just not getting out of here easy. Oh, I think the caller just hung up again. Well, this is one of those days. We'll let you go and perhaps we can connect you with Darren at another time.
If he calls in, send him to my office. I'll answer his question.
All right. Appreciate that.
Thanks,
Thank you. So yes, again, the number is 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. We do have Tom on the line in Saskatoon, though. Tom, we'll go to you. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. What's on your mind?
Well, I'm a retired teacher, and I shared in the administration of schools during my teaching time. I support what Mr. Love has to say, but I do have, I guess, a concern in terms of finances. For example, one of the things the public system in Saskatoon did was cut the industrial arts program out of elementary schools, which really had a huge impact on kids that really benefited from programs like that. But since then, the immigration and the ability to help people with second language issues has been immensely underfunded and just simply not taken care of. Speech path, same thing, same problem. Psychologists, special ed. We have a family member who funds their son's speech path independently, privately, because it cannot be met. The needs cannot be met in the public school system, costing them $600 a month to take care of giving their child the speech path that they need. So, and primary grades, that's where learning begins in the school system. I just finished substituting in a school outside of our city, 22 students, which does not seem like very much.
Mm-hmm.
However, within that classroom, she had kids, 2 of them being autistic, 2 of them being difficulties with speech, plus she had a number of other kids with behavioral issues within the same class. And she called this one of her best years. That in and of itself is scary. That having that kind of load on a teacher is almost unbearable, because teachers always go in with the best interests of their children, and they're unable to meet all the needs of those children because of the diversity that exists within those classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
So from a financial point of view, to take care of all the deficits we have, that would be a horrific financial burden. And it seems like as soon as our government took away the opportunity for local cities and towns to tax and develop a mill rate to use for funding things such as education, everything has unraveled. Everything has gone downhill.
Tom, I appreciate you. I'll let you finish. Go ahead.
I truly hope whomever is our next government, because I have no trust in what we currently have, whoever is the next government, I hope they really have a thought plan that includes the professionals within every special area, i.e. healthcare, i.e. education, policing, and they really involve the community in deciding what's best for them rather than making a decision based purely on politics.
Okay. Tom, I appreciate the call. Thank you so much. We've got one more caller on the line. We'll quickly go to Mick in Swift Current before we speak to the principal of Roadways Literacy Academy. Mick, hello.
Hi. I just have a slightly different opinion than Matt does. I support him in nearly everything that he said, but I think that when I look at the teacher situation and them trying to negotiate with this government on classroom conditions, I almost think that they're just going to be in a losing cause. They just can't win with this situation. So I would negotiate salary this year and, vote in the ballot box whenever the election comes. And that's how we would perhaps win this negotiation. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mick, thanks for calling and sharing your thoughts on that. You can call too, 1-800-716-2221 or email bluesky@cbc.ca. Call early because when we've done shows on education in the past, we get a lot of callers and then it's difficult to squeeze them all in at the end. So don't hesitate. Call now, 1-800-716-2221 or email bluesky@cbc.ca. Now, Kristen Sawchuk is principal of Roadways Literacy Academy. This is a private school in Saskatoon for students with dyslexia and many other complex learning needs. The school fundraises to offer grants to families. It also receives some funding from the province as a qualified independent school. And the principal, Kristen Sawchuk, joins us on the line right now. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. Welcome to Blue Sky.
Thank you.
I want to hear a bit of your story. What led you to being a principal of this school?
I've been a teacher for 20 years, and I taught high school in Saskatoon for a long time. And then my family moved out of province about 6 years ago. And I went back to school. But what led me to changing my direction in education was that I have 2 children of my own who've struggled with learning. And when my daughter, who's now 17, was in grade 4, she just wasn't learning to read. And I was told about Roadways, which was just a small business at the time, and it was a tutoring company that could teach my daughter how to read. And I ended up getting a job as a teacher with this business, and I was able to support my daughter. And I started learning more about my own daughter's learning needs. And both of my daughters have ADHD. One of them is autistic. They've both struggled with reading, both struggled with math. And because I'm a teacher, I was able to support them. But being in the regular school system, I noticed these kids and I saw that their needs were often not being met. And I went back to school to become a special ed teacher. And when I decided to come back into the province, I approached Roadways and was offered this position. And now I support these students who have dyslexia and struggle to learn how to read. And it's a great privilege to be able to work with these families and these kids.
Tell me about some of the stories you hear from other parents.
Every day I sit across the table from parents who are just like me, who are just trying to support their kids, and they can see that they're struggling. And kids that have dyslexia often have other challenges as well. Often they have ADHD. Sometimes they're autistic. They tend to have a variety of issues, not just dyslexia. And the parents are sad watching their kids struggle. And these kids often have been struggling for years. They tend to have difficulties with low self-esteem, emotional issues, because they've just been working so hard. And life can be really tough if you're a child that isn't a typical learner. So
I know.
we sit across the table from each other, and there's often tears from these parents.
Yeah, I believe it. And I know you have a teaching, like you were a teacher, and I know you have a great deal of respect for teachers. But
Absolutely.
yeah, but where are the shortfalls? What's happening in the public system where people don't feel like they're being served?
I support our province's teachers, and I want that to be clear. My entire school supports Saskatchewan teachers, and our goal is to help these students and to return them to the public school system. I have 3 kids that attend public schools in Saskatchewan, and I really believe in public education. What we do to help these students who are complex students, we cannot do it in a classroom with 35 kids or 30 kids. When you have a child that is struggling to learn to read, who's struggling with regulation issues, who needs an EA support, who needs one-on-one, you just can't do that in a class with that many students who have that many needs. And the teachers want to help these students. I think that's what's so hard. When you go into a profession like this because you want to make a difference. You want to support these kids, and you just can't when you don't have the resources that you need. In my school, we bring these kids in, and we have a ratio of 4 kids to 1 teacher, plus EAs, plus tutors to support them. So we're really able to take these students who have dyslexia and help them to learn to read. And kids who have dyslexia can learn to read, but they need a specific kind of instruction. We can offer that to them. I wish that it could be offered to all students in the province.
Do you worry about 2 streams of education here, that families with the means can seek out this kind of learning, this kind of whether it's through Roadways Literacy Academy or even just maybe some extra tutoring, that people with means are able to access this, and those that aren't, if they're in the public system, they may not have options?
Yeah, I was listening to Matt, and I'm on the same page as Matt, and it's actually, it's every child's right in our province to have access to education. They shouldn't have to pay to get these services. I actually really wish that this wasn't necessary. I wish that these services were able to be provided in the public school division, where my own children attend school and need support and need services. I've had to fight for every accommodation, every little bit of extra help that my 2 daughters have needed, and it's often been extra out of pocket that I've had to do for therapies and support. So I completely understand. I really want to, in my own journey, I wanted to be a resource teacher. I wanted to be someone who worked within the public school division offering these services, and coming back into the province, I really hope that that's something that I can do someday. I'm able to learn in this setting, and I want to be a part of the change in education in Saskatchewan. I think we are all on the same page as teachers. We want to support these students. They deserve our support. Every child deserves the right to learn how to read and to be successful in life, but no matter what their means. In our school, we're fundraising like crazy, like you said, to be able to offer scholarships so kids don't have to pay to come to our school. We just got great news that the Tim Hortons Smile campaign has chosen our school to receive the funds from their Smile campaign this year. And we will be putting all of that towards scholarships for students.
Kristen Sawchuk, I have more questions for you. I'd like you just to stay with us, but I have a couple of callers on the line. So Kristen Sawchuk is principal of Roadways Literacy Academy. I'm Leisha Grabinski. You're listening to Blue Sky, and the number to join the conversation is 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. Lori is on the line in Prince Albert. Hi, Lori.
Hi there. Thanks for taking my call.
Absolutely.
So I was just going to mention I'm a retired teacher, and so I very much agree with your first caller, our first guest, about the cuts that have been happening to education, even in the course of my career in the last 10 years. I mean, there's been cuts to speech language pathology and everything that the complex and diverse students really need as supports. And again, I have so much respect for parents who have children that are having difficulties. One thing I'd like to mention, just to, I guess, fill out the picture a bit, is that because of the cuts that have come so deep over all of these years, like not just the past 2 or 3 or since the pandemic, but years before, like I think school divisions are left with virtually nothing to support and help. So I think the pressure is becoming more and more on teachers. I very much would like to get a clear definition of what a complex student is, or a diverse, because I think that it's a very nice way to say what is actually happening in schools. And again, I know parents of complex students have been showing much support during this time to the teachers. But I also want to mention about the other students that are sitting in that classroom, that, as your other caller mentioned, and this is common, that it's not just one problem in a school classroom, there's many. And that, if you're in a classroom and you have, over half your kids are not at the reading level or even close to it, and you have 2 or 3 behavior problems, because there's never just one, what happens to the rest of the kids that are sitting in that classroom? I think if parents truly understood what the effect of that would be in the classroom, for example, and especially if you have someone who's violent, is that, if you're told to pull out the 27 kids when the 28th one is having a moment, which is fine and we need to deal with, but if 27 need to be pulled out of that classroom, well, their learning is interrupted and their learning
affected
is
as well.
not happening. Yeah, exactly.
Lori, I appreciate you calling. I'll let you wrap up. This is always happens. The last 10 minutes, our phones light up. So I'll give you just a few more seconds.
Oh, actually, no, that's fine. I said I'm just very concerned about the 99% of the other kids and the stress on them and how that is affecting their learning as well, just because we don't have enough supports in the classroom overall.
Yeah, your concern comes through, Lori. Thanks for calling.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We'll go to Loy in Saskatoon. Hi, Loy.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I just have a few points. My background, I've worked with special needs people from the 70s till, 2015. Background psych nurse and B.Ed. So just when they I've got 3 things. When they talked about who's going to pay for it, when I was growing up, I'm in my 70s, our sales tax was for education and health. And I'm just wondering if the PST still goes to education, or is that more somewhere else? The other thing is in the 70s and 80s, I think even after that, there was always a formula that was established by the provincial education department for kids who needed special help in the regular classrooms. And I know there some slipped through the, didn't get the funding that we thought they should get, but they had assessments, looked at their needs, and then either an EA or smaller groups were assigned. And again, that's probably gone somewhere too. But, those formulas were quite effective for most people, because in 73, that's when they started letting human rights had kids with special needs go to the regular school system.
Inclusive education. Mm-hmm.
Yes, right. So, I was there when that started. The other thing, I just wanted, the government was talking about these special classes for 15 kids with, 2 EAs and a teacher. I think I've been around too long, because they say when it's repeated the third time, then, you've been in it too long. They used to have special education classes like that. I think it was like 20, 30, even 30 some years ago. They were called structured success classrooms, and they used behavior issues and that kind of thing. The problem with that is some of the kids with the challenging behaviors learned from each other, and they just got, more challenging for the individuals. So my answer is maybe they need more resource room teachers who pull out those kids who have special needs. Challenging behaviors is communication, or to meet the children's needs or the individual's needs. That's what they need to be looking at.
Okay.
So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Have a good day.
You too. We have so many callers. Kim in Prince Albert, we'll go to you. We'll try to keep it short just so we can get as many people on as possible. And I still have a couple more questions for our principal, Kristen Sawchuk. But Kim in Prince Albert, hello.
Hi, thank you so much. I'll keep it quick. I just want to add to what the last caller said. I agree with what has been said. The biggest problem is the cutbacks. There's no doubt about that. Our government has to go. The second issue is this nonsense about inclusivity. I've taught schools for 30 years, and I tell you, if I had to go back into the public system, if that was my only choice, I teach adults, I don't teach in the public system, I would sooner wash toilets, because I could do a good job of that. There's no way a teacher can do a good job based on what they're being asked to do. Kids are being put in the same classroom with other kids because they're their peers. So just because you happen to be born in the same year, obviously that's not necessarily your peer. If you're severely autistic, if you're going to a gym class and you're in a wheelchair and everybody else is doing this, if you're in math class and you're completely nonverbal and your intellectual ability is that of a 5-year-old, and you're sitting with your peers, and anyway, that's utter nonsense. And no, it can't be done any more than you could ask a surgeon to perform 3 surgeries at the same time. Each teacher is qualified and trained to do a particular thing and to do it well. They can't do everything for everybody.
Okay. Kim, thank you. Kim in Prince Albert. Marcella, we'll go to you in Cut Knife before we go back to our principal. Marcella, hello.
Yeah, in 1996, I heard that there was 1 in 10,000 children with autism. Today we have many more other problems like ADHD and all those other things. But anyway, in 2014, I went to a meeting where a government retired researcher he came out to warn us about glyphosate. And in 2015, they predicted there would be 1 in 50 children would have autism. By 2025, they expected 1 in every 2 children, especially boys, would have autism. So my question is, how can we expect teachers today to cope with all these changes in the last 20 years in our children's behavior, and et cetera, with limited funds that are probably the same as they were 10 years ago? And it's not only our education system, it's our health system. How are we going to cope with all these autistic kids? And we need to put the problem where the problem is. And that is, we've got to change eating glyphosate in all our food, chemicals, everything.
I will fully admit I don't have the background on that, but I appreciate you raising this, and I think your concerns are echoed by other people listening who are just wondering how did we get here and what are the solutions. So Marcella, thank you. We got a couple minutes, and so I just want to put 2 more questions to our principal, Kristen Sawchuk of Roadways Literacy Academy. And so the big question we've been asking today is, what are the consequences if people have lost faith in the public school system? And I think about the kids who are struggling. And so, Kristen Sawchuk, what are your thoughts on that? What are the consequences if kids' needs aren't met?
I certainly haven't lost faith in our public schools, and definitely not in our teachers. I fully have faith that these are the right people for the job, but they just need the resources to teach these kids. And these kids have always existed. Yes, their needs are complex, but there was a couple of callers ago, she was talking about behaviors, and that's a form of communication. And what happens when children do not get the support that they need is that they develop behaviors that lead to things in their life that we really don't want to happen. But every child who comes into our school is worthy of the support that we so badly want to offer them. And at our school, we teach these kids with dyslexia the science of reading. We understand dyslexic kids at our school. We know what we need to do in order to help them be successful. We know that they learn best in small group settings. We know that they require explicit, direct instruction. We have seen kids with severe learning disabilities achieve so much with the support that they need. They do not have to go down these paths where they are more likely to have severe anxiety and depression. They're more likely to not be able to make a living. If they have the support they need, these are intelligent children. These are out of the box creative thinkers who just need an environment that supports them. They're disabled by their environment. When we provide them with the support that they need, these kids do incredible, amazing things. I'm so proud of our students.
I hear that in your voice.
Go ahead.
I will have to end it there. I just appreciate hearing your perspective today and getting this window into some of the work you're doing at your school. And also to our other guest today, Matt Love, the NDP education critic, and all of our callers who brought in so many different perspectives. So we'll end it there for today.